good afternoon, everybody. We're here in the LSC Lounge, and if you want to come join us, we're going to be doing a session on offsite construction and how, as a manufacturer or service provider, you can start getting involved in offsite to help builders reach more attainable prices. So, again, 3:30, we've got a 30-minute session that we're going to be doing on offsite construction. My name is Jennifer Castenson. I am the Vice President at Buildxact and writing about offsite construction for Forbes and a number of different publications. I'm here with a couple others. I'll let them introduce themselves. But please come join us. We're going to engage with the audience, too. You guys can come and ask questions and get engaged with the conversation. So I'll start with you, Mollie. If you can introduce yourself and tell people a little bit more about AUAR.
So my name is Mollie Claypool. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Automated Architecture, or AUAR for short. We're a UK-based construction tech company that's operational in the EU, UK, Canada, and the US. And what we provide is a robotic microfactory that can do on-site or off-site construction of the core and shell of timber frame homes.
Thank you, Mollie. Thanks for being here. And I'm going to skip you real quick and go to Joe.
Hello, my name is Joe Wheeler. I'm at Metre Homes and Vice President of Product Innovation. Kind of heading up our off-site process. We started as a fully stick-built, basic component architecture, and now we're moving into a hybrid modular system.
And David, who's with the LSE group, is joining us to add on to the questions. David, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, my name is Dave Bernadino. I am the founder and managing director of Bernadino Enterprises. We do fractional executive work for brands across the home building industry, consumer packaged goods, and consumer healthcare. I also serve as your LSC chairman, so appreciate everyone for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you, David. So one of the things, like I was mentioning before, is we're trying to hit more attainable prices for consumers and for home buyers. And so off-site construction promises some efficiencies that will allow us to do that. Mollie, can you talk about what kind of efficiencies you're able to deliver through your process?
So for us, what we are able to do is essentially consolidation. So if you are having to outsource part of your design engineering process to other parts of the stakeholder chain, we automate that process. So we have a software that powers our microfactories called Master Builder, which basically digests plans and turns them into manufacturing code, as well as all of the other things and documentation that you need. So that creates what is now a very resource-intensive process into a one-day process. So that reduces your FTE costs in terms of what you need in design engineering support, and then it also makes sure that everything that is being passed through in terms of what an architect or an engineer or your existing designs, it is manufacturable, it's buildable, and you have complete transparency on costs. So that saves a lot of efficiencies on the front end, and then on the back end, the microfactory is provided as in a kind of rental model where you only pay for the equipment when you're using it, which means that you don't have to take on the capital expenditure of the equipment, which increases your overhead costs, right? So, and then accrues more when it's not being used. So we manage that process, and we essentially deliver panel packs just as you would in any other more automated process or in a manual factory without that equipment risk.
That's an interesting point there, and I actually want to bring Joe into the conversation because builders, let's face it, are very risk averse, right? And have this mindset of, you have a great innovation, has anyone else tried it first? And so what are the misconceptions or barriers that you face to get someone like Joe and his team to adopt it? Because obviously you're doing some great savings, got it, but again, by nature, we're very risk averse.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right, is the phrase. So you have to show that you know what you're talking about, and then you also have to make it as easy as possible. So we're not expecting any builder to change anything about how they work except for what we provide. So you send us data that you already create. We can create connections through our API to other software that you might use to help streamline your connections to us. But then you just get the panel packs that you would be producing otherwise. we take care of the operation of the microfactory. You don't have to change anything about your workflows except for where it sits, and that's it. So lowering the adoption risk with as little friction as possible through what we provide is the way forward.
Got it. So then as you're thinking about innovation, at a place like Van Meter, like how do you start thinking about these new technologies and stuff like that? Because at the end of the day, right, it's still got to fit in with the business. It's still got to fit in with whatever thesis you have as far as how you want to run the business. So how do you guys think about it?
Well, it's all about efficiency. And if you look, entering this stick-built kind of process, they're in the Stone Ages, right? They're dinosaurs. You're talking about an industry that's unwilling to kind of try, risk-averse. We're basically bringing a process that tackles all of the inefficiencies that exist in construction now. And what is that? That's like building a house, kind of thinking like you build a car now, on an assembly line, where you're looking at just a different model. You're bringing materials directly to the factory as opposed to hand into hand into hand and then being applied. But I'm fortunate to work in a company that is small enough that we're able to take the baby steps to figure this out as we go, rather than being a huge startup with a lot of investments. No, we go one project at a time in baby steps, and we're seeing, the advantages of moving this direction. We're so excited because we feel we've got it figured out.
You just talked about how the manufacturers are bringing product to you. So we're in a room full of the suppliers. How would you talk to them about what they need to do and how they need to change processes to work with an off-site builder?
So we have the material delivered directly to the plant. So we're eliminating the middleman. We're gonna have that, and the process is so efficient because we're looking at sub-assemblies. We're looking at prefabrication of these components, the simplification of everything, pre-manufacture, it's like pre-cut panels, pre-manufactured trusses, wall panels, prefabricated HVAC ductwork systems, larger systems. We're just simplifying the process. We're eliminating that messy middle.
And are you working with manufacturers in terms of their R&D in order to think differently about the products to get them to you in that ready state?
It's not that difficult. It's really about, well, one, we're building in volume, so we can order in volume. We're getting better pricing. The shipping is much less expensive. The prefabrication, say, of panels happens in our plant. We're working with, say, our truss manufacturer. They're providing us some equipment that allows us to do more than just trusses, like CNC, robotics, prefabricated panels. Our idea is that on the assembly line, you're going to have all the sub-assemblies, everything pre-cut ahead of time so that the carpenter or the installer is not using a tape measure. They're not using a drill or a saw. It's basically plug and play.
Right. So Mollie, same questions to you, but then you're raising another point is like how are then you helping educate the builder about the new process and their installers on site? But first to you to talk about how are you working with the manufacturers and helping them think differently?
Our strategy is just to show what it actually costs and to say, this is how you can increase your throughput with less risk.
Yep.
And when we prove that out, it becomes a very easy sell. The thing that is the barrier, which we've now adopted into our model, is, well, what is this going to cost me in terms of my operational day-to-day changes? And so we try to just take that away, and then we take on that risk as an early stage company, because that's our responsibility if we want to be able to bring a product to market in a way that can gain the trust and credibility that people will want to use it more. So that's my responsibility, is to embed that in my own thinking and embed that in my offer. And then over time, some of those relationships or some of the things that I'm doing might become more embedded in their business.
That's great that you're embedding the change management, so to speak, into your processes for the manufacturer and for the builder. But there's always a third rail of this industry, which is codes and the building officials, right? And so how do you manage that? Because your average code official or building official is used to a stick build. And now they're dealing with something that's factory built. I've heard stories in my home state of New Jersey where a building official will actually ask the builder to rip the thing apart, even though it's already been pre-approved at the factory. So how do you manage stuff like that, given we're still building as if we're in the Stone Ages?
It's actually an advantage what we're talking about here, because NTA, the third-party inspectors that come to the factory and they inspect the work that you've installed there, take all responsibility for that component that leaves the factory. So the local inspector is only responsible for where that building touches the ground and how these boxes get connected together. So it eliminates a lot of risk, and it guarantees quality. All of your systems are pre-tested in the factory, so they show up. There's again no risk, but you're capitalizing on just the efficiency of a manufacturing process versus the inefficiency of an on-site stick-built process, which is very unpredictable, right?
I mean, I think another part of this is the power of the digital data, and the fact that at least in our manufacturing product, we are able to track the behavior through a data model, and so we have every single nail accounted for, every single cut accounted for in a digital model that can play back out the production simulation for us. So you have that full picture of the entire life cycle from design all the way to when the panel leaves the robot, so that you can use that for an inspection process as well.
So I could imagine that you're reducing cycle times, but also net benefit callbacks, right? Because that's the bane of everyone's existence, right? Stick build. There's a lot of human variability with the process. Speak to more about that.
So our product can be used on-site or off-site, and it's the same efficiencies whether it's on-site or off-site, except for a manufacturer, you have more control end-to-end, right? So obviously on-site, we're delivering the same product, but there's still other things that have to happen. Now, the thing that we do is we de-risk for those next steps. So there's simple things like that you definitely already do, which is like pre-cutting, right? Just having that all laid out so that when you get an electrician who comes in and says, today I'm doing this house, he doesn't have to think hard about where he bashes a hole in the wall because it's already marked out for him.
There's no bashing holes in walls.
Exactly,
Not
no
with what
bashing
we
hole.
do.
Why would you ever need to do that, right?
Yeah, we're working with a truss manufacturer. I can't mention the name, but it's amazing. They're working with us, and we're looking at pre-cutting plumbing drops in the OSB, the subfloor. Mapping out. We've got a machine that prints on the subfloor and it'll map out where the walls go. And everything's gonna be laid out. That electrician is gonna have that path to run their wire. In every unit, what we really benefit, every unit, say every kitchen, is exactly the same as far as how it's put together. So total efficiency, limiting waste, guaranteeing the quality.
So how do you start bringing the manufacturers in a capacity where they could start rethinking their products? So I know that offsite, it could potentially give us the optionality. People then on site don't have to carry big loads of things. That it's all automated in a factory, or how can which would in addition create more efficiencies and cost cutting in the process, right? So if you're thinking about the products differently, delivering them differently, and don't have the limitations of on-site labor, then how do you bring manufacturers into that conversation?
I mean, it's ultimately down to cost, right? So if you can command a cost, that means that you're going to save 10% on every home that runs through.
Yeah.
You're winning. That's what it comes to. Again, the proof is in the pudding around cost. So for me, that is very simple. You say, hey, I have this design that I want to see what it's going to cost. and we just produce what that will cost.
So
And
the manufacturer comes to you. So what you're saying is that manufacturers can come to you and ask for a design to start thinking about their products differently.
Exactly. So we have, we've worked on over in the last 6 months 150 different designs from all over, and that's just designs where we were able to apply existing knowledge to them rather than ones where we had to do maybe some system development work, which we're not doing at the moment, where we have kind of standard sets that we look at. And that means that we can literally say, here's the product, and this is what it costs, and this is what you need to be able to do organizationally to build that.
I guess the advantage, you keep saying manufacturer. We have the advantage that we're our own builder. We don't subcontract, Now, maybe down the road, we are talking about the Sears 2.0 model, where we're going to prefabricate these kit homes and then be able to sell them.
I'm talking about like who you're getting your drywall from.
Okay, product
Yeah.
manufacturers.
Yes.
Yeah. Like the proof in the pudding. I mean, we're ordering it volume, and the subcontractors are loving this because they're not, again, hauling all these materials, this ease of distribution across
But
the
you
factory
could then
floor.
have a sheet of drywall 20 feet long, and
could.
then
Yeah.
you could cut back on the taping and the bedding and the sanding and the right.
Here's an example: our HVAC. So our HVAC sub has a metal fab shop where they pre-build their ductwork. No longer are we building them in 4-foot or 3-foot sections. We're building in 12-foot sections at their shop. So there's fewer joints and ease of assembly. We're sliding them right into the trusses ahead of time, and then the connections happen on the site.
How did you inspire that conversation, and how can we bring that to show
I love it.
people the efficiency that's been created? How do you validate and quantify what's happening there?
You build them.
Yeah. It's all about, like, literally the proof is in the pudding. You just have to
Yes.
do it. And I think this is the interesting thing, is that because there's risk aversity, right, to anything that's new or different, you have to just be the first mover who does it.
Yeah.
You have to not just do it once. You have to do it 3 times, 5 times, 10 times,
yeah.
because the first one is probably going to stink for everyone. The second one will get better. The third one will be even better. The fourth is going to blow your mind, and the fifth is going to be like the product.
And that's our advantage. The baby steps. You're not losing really along the way. You're learning as you go, and you make breakthroughs, one little breakthrough at a time. Like one example is our roofs. We're prefabricating our roofs now. We're pre-shingling them. You're building them on the plant floor, so they're safe. You're not like 4 stories up in the air. The builders love it. It's efficient, and now we're delivering them at like $500 a roof less than on-site.
That's
building.
huge, and
Yes.
that's what we need to be sharing. Is like, how can you quantify the eliminating that risk and the health and safety equation? David, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to ask. So you're talking about, you're developing your proof of concept with this MVP. Obviously, right, to do this at scale, there's certain things that need to be true. So as you're thinking about like capital markets, what's been the reception by the money, by the check writers? Because ultimately, right, it's about scaling up and getting the financial resources to be able to blow this up. Curious to get your take on that.
From a startup perspective?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm at the intersection of home building and robotics. When I started AUAR, we were originally a design to manufacture consultancy, and we did a lot of software development. When we started up, nobody was interested in robotics and construction, and everyone was really terrified. In the last year, there's been a massive shift in the thinking in the capital markets towards robotics, particularly vertical robotics, which means that it's domain-specific, industry-specific robotics rather than generalist humanoid robotics.
Yep.
And that has been extremely advantageous for us to be first movers in that space, because people are finally paying attention to, it's not generalist robotics that takes 25 years to come to fruition to provide value to my industry. It's stuff that can provide value to me today because it will create a cost differential of 10% to how I'm already currently operating. If I get in early, I'm going to be part of that story.
Yep.
And I'm going to be the one who gains the most over the lifespan of this expansion. So capital is looking at that trend and seeing it start to open, which has made it quite easy, actually, to raise money over the last year.
That's great to hear because within the LSC members, there are several of them that have corporate venture capital funds, right? And so being able to have awareness of the fact of these new technologies, or even on the builder side where you're financing these new developments, I'm sure you have, your employer has capital stacks on their own as they're looking at these technologies, right? When you're looking at ROI, MOIC, and all those other metrics, this has got to factor into that calculus, right?
Yeah, I think what you have to be careful about is getting too heavy overhead. That's the beauty of what we're doing, is what type of robotics are the most efficient. Like a CNC router that can cut a 4x8 panel, that's beautiful. You pre-program it, and then it's also important of standardization. It's a whole nother topic, but I wanted to talk about design as being a big part of this. Because if you're prefabricating, if you're working modular, design, it's in the DNA of the design. One of the biggest problems of prefab now, they call it slice and dice, where you just take a building and say, hey, we'll try and prefab this, and they're going and cutting this up. That's not what we're doing. We're redesigning every home that we build. We're consolidating the plumbing in what we call the core of the house or the engine of the car. And it's total efficiency. And that way, with everything grouped together, our sub-assemblies are very, very compact and can be like the plumbing branch of a primary bathroom is one branch, and it's not built under the house. It's actually built up on a bench and brought over and set in, just like the engine of a car would be set in. And so we're standardizing everything. We're standardizing the designs. We're only offering certain bathroom sizes, certain plan types. On the core of the house, it stays standard, stays set. And the variation happens on how long the house is and how wide the house is. So and the other thing about investments is I think one of the big problems with these big builders, the Kateras, it's they've gotten way over their heads with investments, and they'll never be able to return, those investments. And the beauty of what we do is one step at a time. We're seeing the progress. We're seeing the successes. We're working with, the other thing is we have to filter through the trades and make sure we're working with partners that are in on this, that are open to this. For example, we worked with a plumber who just said, this is not going to work. So when we got their labor price, it was $2,000 more per house, just because it was different. We went to a different plumber, and they said, we love this. We're in on this. We can be part of this. And plus, in the future, we'll be your manufacturer in the factory, or your plumber in the factory. And we're working together. And so now we went to the PEX manufacturer and told them the same thing. So now we got them. They're doing the designs for us. And, we're talking about sub-assemblies and limiting waste. Here's the other thing. The plumber came in, the first plumber, the $2,000 more. We tried to get them to justify that. Why is it more? What's the reason? They say, well, this, and they say, and we factor in 10% waste. Right, whoa, wait a minute. We're not going to have waste. Yeah. We won't have any waste. You can give that 10% back, right?
No, the way that I like to think about solving the problem is that you're productizing the product, but you're also productizing the system.
Yep.
And that is a shift in thinking about what a product is that is fundamental to thinking about construction this way.
Yeah.
So I think that we've covered most of what we wanted to, but I think one thing that I'd like you both to offer our audience of service providers and product manufacturers is one key takeaway from both of you. What is the takeaway that people should have from this conversation, or to work with either one of you to be smarter about working with offsite?
I think that you have to really understand what your entry point will be. what is the product and the system, like the product that you're giving to the market, and how might what you're doing today need to change in order to fit into an off-site system. And to be very open-minded about where there's efficiencies that can be gained, because at least in my experience, it's definitely not always where you expect. And that open-mindedness and that idea of partnership actually is very, very, very important. So work with people that you trust, but also be open-minded that the things that will surprise you are going to happen more often than not.
Do you think there's more of an opportunity? I know this is supposed to be a key takeaway, but it just makes me think there's more of an opportunity for manufacturers to lead and be part of the design considerations, whereas with other types of building, it's just their product that they're selling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like for what we do, it's a one of the things that we've gone through as a business is looked at the nail guns that we're using, right? And like, what kind of nails are we using, and what do we want to be using long term, and who do we want to work with that's going to make the kind of nail gun that we want? We are having those conversations, and your success will be our success will be your success if we work together in defining what that future needs to look like and what that product needs to look like that can feed into what our system is doing.
That's right. Yeah, and as far as product manufacturers, for them to be on board, to know that these materials, these products have to evolve to work with the new way of building. I would say we all have to kind of realize where we are right now. I'm holding my phone because who would have thought 10, 15 years ago we'd all be walking around with $1,200 computers in our hands, right? The building industry is going to change. We are going to move in the direction of industrialization. There's no question about it. And I think we've got to, give up this attitude that we've done it this way for 100 years and there's no reason to change it. It's going to change, and it's the success is going to be in those companies, builders that embrace this, and product manufacturers.
And the case studies that come out of that. I mean, there will be numbers behind it and data behind it. Well, thank you so much, Mollie and David and Joe. What a great conversation. What a fun conversation. Does anybody in the audience have questions for our panelists? Okay.
I think people are looking for the bar,
I
right?
know. Thank you so much, you guys. And thank you to those who listened. Appreciate it.